Hi everyone, welcome back to Study Room. My name is Angel and today we're going to study chapter 6 of class 9, that is My Childhood. So it is written by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. So let's know some basic facts about him. So Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was an Indian aerospace scientist who served as the 11th President of India from 2002 to 2007. Okay, that's some cool facts, right? So it's basically a very interesting chapter. So let's know more about it. Like, what is the theme of the story? So this story is a chapter or an extract from the autobiography of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam titled as Wings of Fire. Okay, its main theme is that our life is shaped by experiences and people around us. So, as the name suggests of this chapter, that my childhood, it basically talks about the childhood experiences of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and his companions, his first job, his first wage, about his parents, etc., etc. So, this is a very interesting chapter. You get to uh, learn a lot of ethical values from it. So, let's get started. So, I was born into a middle class Tamil family in the island town of Rameshwaram in the erstwhile Madras state. My father, Janul Abdeen, had neither much formal education nor much wealth. Despite these disadvantages, he possessed great innate wisdom and a true generosity of spirit. So, Dr. Abdul Kalam says that he was born into a middle class family, a Tamil family actually. Tamil family is Tamil Nadu state in India, so that's why it's called Tamil family. In the island of Rameshwaram, Rameshwaram is also at the south of India, like very top. Rameshwaram is also at the south of India. Okay, so in the erstwhile Madras, erstwhile means former Madras. Okay, Madras state. So his father, Jalaluddin, neither had much of a formal education nor much of a wealth, right? So despite these disadvantages, he possessed great innate means inborn, inborn wisdom and a true generosity of spirit, which means that he was kind, he was also wise. So, despite the fact that he didn't have you know formal education or he was also not very wealthy, but still he was very kind and wise, right? So he had an ideal helpmate in my mother, that is Ashi Amma. I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day, but I am quite certain that far more outsiders ate with us than all members of our own family put together. So, his father said that he had an ideal helpmate, which means a support, like when you imagine a support, that a person who supports you. So she ideally fit into that position, like she was an ideal helpmate. Okay, so in my mother, his mother's name was Ashiyama. Okay, I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day, but I am quite certain that far more outsiders ate with us, all the members of our own family put together. Okay, so this shows that her mother was also very kind and generous. Okay, because she fed, which means that gave food to a lot of people. Okay, moving on. Now, I was one of many children, a short boy with rather undistinguished looks. Undistinguished means common or ordinary. Okay, so born to a tall and handsome parents. We lived in our ancestral house, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. So, what the author is saying here that he looked like an average person, like a common and ordinary person, whereas his parents were very tall and handsome. So he said that he lived in his ancestral house. So what does an ancestral house means? It's like a house in which the members of the generation of a family lived in this house like from a lot of time and continues to live on. So that's called an ancestral house. Okay. So which was built in the middle of 19th century. Okay. So it was a fairly large pakka house. So what is a pakka house? Pakka house is made of limestone, brick and cement, etc. So on the Mosque Street in Rameswaram. So he's saying that he had a pakka house which was made of limestone and brick on the Mosque Street in Rameswaram. Okay. My austere, which means strict father used to avoid all inessential comforts and luxuries. So, according to his father, he was not into, spending money on all the inessential and unnecessary things. But however, all necessities were provided for in terms of food, medicine, or clothes. So he's saying that, but all the things which are essential were provided to him. Okay, but all the unnecessary things or essential things were not provided to him. He didn't believe in buying such things. Okay, his father. Now, in fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, secure, safe childhood, both materially and emotionally. So here the author is saying that he had a very safe childhood, both materially, like he was provided with everything that are essential, and emotionally, like he always had emotional support from his parents. Okay, so now the Second World War broke out in 1939 when I was 8 years old. For reasons I have never been able to understand, a sudden demand of tamarind seeds erupted in the market. So, when the author was 8 years old, the Second World War broke out. That was in 1939. Okay, so he didn't understand that for what reason the sudden demand of tamarind seeds erupted in the market. Okay, this is tamarind. Imli that you say in Hindi. Okay. Okay. So I used to collect the seeds and sell them to a provision shop on Mosque Street. A day's collection would fetch me a princely sum of 1 anna. Okay, so what the author is saying here, that he used to collect the tamarind seeds and then sell them to a provision shop. Provision shop is what? Ration shop on Mosque Street. So a day's collection would fetch me the princely sum. Princely sum means a huge amount, but here the author is saying this in a uh, here the author is saying this line in a ironic way. Okay, like he's saying that yeah, he got a lot of amount, a lot of money by selling the tamarind seeds, but that's in an ironic way, like he doesn't mean it. Okay, so why does it say why is he saying that? Because 1 anna is equivalent to 6 paise. Okay, so according to him, when he was younger, he used to think that, oh wow, he earned so much. But now, when he looked back at the time, he, thinks that he knows that it wasn't a huge amount or fair price. Okay, my brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I would later attempt to trace in the headlines in Dinamani. Our area being isolated was completely unaffected by the war. So here what the author is saying that his brother-in-law, that whose name was Jalaluddin, would tell him the stories about the war, and then later author used to read about it in the headlines in Dinamani. Dinamani is Tamil daily newspaper. Okay. As the author's area was quite isolated, so it was unaffected by the war. But soon India was forced to join the Allied forces and something like a state of emergency was declared. The first casualty came in the form of suspension of the train halt at Rameswaram station. So what's happening here is that when India was forced to join Allied forces, what is Allied forces? It's armies of USA, UK and Russia. So when India joined the Allied forces, then state of emergency was declared. So what state of emergency? It's just when all the power is in the hand of president, and when it's president rule basically. So it's just like a curfew when all your privileges that are given to you just ends during an emergency. So that's what emergency is. So the first casualty came in the form of suspension of the train halt at Rameswaram station. Suspension means end, and train halt means stopping of the train. Okay, so what does this line means that after the declaration of emergency, the casualty of stopping of the train at Rameswaram station ended. Okay, so what happened because of that? That the train didn't stop at Rameswaram station. So because of that, the newspapers now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train on the Rameswaram road between Rameswaram and Dhanuskodi. Okay, that's an important point. Okay, so that forced my cousin Samsuddin, who distributed newspapers in Rameswaram, to look for a helping hand to catch the bundles, and as if naturally, I filled the slot. Okay, so what happened now because of that? The his cousin Samsuddin, who distributed newspapers at Rameswaram, he was looking for someone who could help him. Then, as if naturally, he filled in the slot. It means that it was very natural. It was very like it was a job he could do very well. So that's why it means that he filled the slot. Okay. Now, Samsuddin helped me earn my first wages. Half a century later, I can still feel the urge of pride in earning my own money for the first time. So, okay, so half a century later, by the way, means 50 years later. Okay, so Samsuddin helped the author to earn his first wages, his first salary or first income. Okay, and half a century later, 50 years later, he can still feel the surge of pride, the increment of pride in earning his own money for the first time. Okay, every child is born with some inherited characteristics into a specific socioeconomic and emotional environment and trained in certain ways by figures of authority. Okay, so what the author is trying to say here is that every child is born with some inherited, which means qualities that you get from your qualities that you get from your parents. Okay, so every child is born with some inherited characteristics, right, into a specific socioeconomic and emotional environment. So every child is grown in an emotional and socioeconomic child with and trained in certain ways by figures of authority. So what is a figures of authority? Like a person who holds power over someone or who makes the decision for them. Okay, so for children, who are the figures of authority? First of all, their parents, and then their teachers. Okay, so here, what does this mean? That every child is born with some qualities that you get from your parents, and you live in an emotional and socio-economical environment, and trained by the figure of authority that are your parents and teachers. So now author is talking about himself that I inherited honesty and self-discipline from my father, and from my mother he inherited faith in goodness and deep kindness. And so did my three brothers and sister. I had three close friends in my childhood, Ramanatha Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiv Prakasan. Okay, so here the author is saying that as everyone get certain type of characteristics, inherit characteristics from their parents. So what characteristic did author inherited from their parents was from his father. He inherited honesty and self-discipline, self-discipline, and from his mother he inherited faith in goodness and deep kindness. Okay, so this shows that author is so grateful and for his parents, and this shows the feeling of gratitude here. Okay, so this is a very important lesson that you get from this chapter. That author is so thankful for their parents, even if we all know that he was not belonged from a very well-off family, but still he's so grateful for his parents. So that's a quality that you guys also should adapt from him. Okay, now. So what do we, get so what do we understand from this? That the author shows the value of gratitude, that he is very thankful for whatever he has and whatever his parents have given to him, right? So we all know that the author did not belong to very well-off family, but still, like, he has so much to thank for to his parents. Like, you guys should definitely have just get the point, get the message. It's just so important for you guys also to thank your parents, like they do so much for you. So make sure to thank your parents for whatever they do for you. Okay. Okay, so moving on. So all these qualities are also inherited by his three brothers and sister. Okay. I had three close friends in my childhood. His close friends were Ramananda Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiv Prakasan. So all these boys were from orthodox Hindi Brahmin families. As children, none of us ever felt any difference amongst ourselves because of our religious differences and upbringing. So here the author is saying that his friends belonged to an orthodox Hindu family. What is orthodox? Orthodox means strict, strict Hindu family. Okay, so as children, none of them ever, felt any differences amongst themselves because of their religion or differences in their upbringing. Okay. In fact, Ramanatha Shastri was the son of Pakshi Lakshmana Shastri, the high priest of the Rameshwaram temple. Okay. Rameshwaram temple is in Rameshwaram. It is a very beautiful temple. So later, Ramanatha Shastri took over the priesthood of the Rameshwaram temple from his father, and Arvindan went into a business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, and Shiv Prakasan became the catering contractor for the Southern Railways. Okay. During the annual Sri Sitaram Kalyanam ceremony. So it is what is Sri Sitaram Kalyanam ceremony? It's just a ceremony in which the redepiction of the marriage of Rama and Sita occurs. Okay, so it's kind of a marriage festival. So during this ceremony, our family used to arrange boats with a special platform, as you can see, the boats, special platform for carrying the idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site. Okay, so, situated in the middle of the pond. So the marriage site is situated in the middle of the pond. Okay, and the pond was called as Rama Tirtha. Okay, so and the pond was near the author's house. Okay, so events from the Ramayana and from the life of the prophet were the bedtime stories my mother and my grandmother would tell the children in our family. One day when I was in the fifth standard at the Rameshwaram Elementary School, a new teacher came to our class. Okay, so here it shows that the mother and grandmother of our author, used to tell the stories of Ramayana and the life of the prophet. So it basically tells the story of Hindu and Muslim gods. Okay, so there was no difference in the religion, etc. So the stories were told in the bedtime were Ramayana and the life of prophet. Okay, so one day what happened when he was in fifth standard at Rameshwaram Elementary School, a new teacher came to his class. Okay, I used to wear a cap which marked me as Muslim, and I always sat in the front row next to Ramanatha Shastri, who wore the sacred thread. The new teacher who couldn't stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy. Okay, so let's read again. I used to wear a cap. Can you see this? This cap. This cap is for worn by Muslim and which marked me as Muslim. Okay, as it's said in here. So he always sat in the front row with his friend Ramanatha Shastri, who wore sacred thread. Okay, so sacred thread is like something like that. Okay. So sacred thread is like, for example, I'm very okay at drawing, so just bear with me. For example, can you see this kind of thread? This kind of thread, is worn by Brahmins. So this is the thread they're talking about. That is the sacred thread. A choti like that. So here but what happened? The new teacher couldn't stomach, which means he couldn't tolerate. He couldn't tolerate the fact that a Hindu priest's son was sitting with a Muslim boy. Okay, so in accordance with our social ranking, as the new teacher saw it, I was asked to go and sit on the back bench. I felt very sad, and so did Ramanatha Shastri. He looked utterly downcast. Downcast means sad, sadly, as I shifted to my seat in the last row. Okay. So the image of him weeping, crying when I shifted to the last row left a lasting impression on me. Okay. After school, we went home and told our respective parents about the incident. So it was this incident left a lasting impression on the author. Okay. Now Lakshmana Shastri summoned the teacher, called out called out the teacher, and in our presence told the teacher that he should not spread the poison of social inequality and communal intolerance in the minds of innocent children. Okay. Then he bluntly asked the teacher to either apologize, okay, pardon, or quit the school and the island. Not only did the teacher regret his behavior, but the strong sense of conviction Lakshmana Shastri conveyed ultimately reformed or changed this young teacher. Now, on the whole, the small society of Rameshwaram was very rigid in terms of segregation of different social groups. Segregation and division. Okay. Now, however, my science teacher, Shiv Subramanya Iyer, though an orthodox, strict Brahmin with a very conservative wife, conservative and traditional, one who have traditional beliefs, wife, was something of a rebel, like rebellious, like someone who oppose, and okay, that's called a rebel. So the teacher tried to break the social barriers that were created because of the religion differences, etc., so that the people from varying backgrounds could mingle, could understand each other easily. And he used to spend hours with me, with the author, and would say, Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par with the highly educated people of the big cities. Like you are with on the same level. Okay. same level with the highly educated people of the big cities. Okay. Now, one day, the teacher invited Dr. Abdul Kalam to his home for a meal. His wife was horrified at the idea of a Muslim boy being invited to dine in her ritually pure kitchen. Ritually pure kitchen means that his kids, like her kitchen, is not affected by any other person who's from a different race or religion from them. Okay, so she refused to serve him in her kitchen. She just completely refused to serve him in the kitchen. Shiv Subramania Iyer was not perturbed, nor did he get angry with his wife, but instead served me with his own hands and sat down beside me to eat his meal. So the teacher was not perturbed. Perturbed means upset, nor did he get angry with his wife. But what he did, he served him with his own hands and sat down beside him to eat his meal. Okay. Now, his wife watched us from behind the kitchen door. I wondered whether she had observed any difference in the way I ate rice, drank water, or cleaned the floor after the meal. Okay, so his wife was observing him from the behind in the kitchen door. So he was wondering whether she had observed any difference in him, like the way he ate the rice, he drank water, cleaned the floor, etc., etc. So when I was leaving his house, Shiv Subramania Iyer invited me to join him for dinner again the next weekend. So observing my hesitation, he told me not to get upset, saying, "Once you decide to change the system, such problems have to be confronted." Okay, so here, when the author was leaving his house, his teacher's house, so his teacher invited him again for dinner again for next weekend. Okay, but when he observed that the author was hesitating to come again, so he told him that not to get upset, and that once you decide to change the system, that if you want to change the system and you've decided that, then such problems have to be confronted, that you have to face such kind of problem and speak against it. Okay, so when I visited his house the next week, Shiv Subramania Iyer's wife took me inside her kitchen and served me food with her own hands. So, when author visited his home, his teacher's home again next week, so his wife took him inside the kitchen and then served him food with her own hands.